Hi everyone, it's Lana again. We had another request for a tutorial, and the tutorial was going over headstand, Sirsasana. This is a challenging posture, and I dare say that it gets easier the moment that you can lift your feet off the floor. Of course, getting to the point of being able to lift your feet off the floor is the challenge for most of us. So I'm going to try and break it down for you a little bit and give you some tips. If you know that you have neck troubles and you're just starting this, please wait until you have somebody who can help you in person. I'll give you exercises that you can do without taxing your neck at all that can help build strength before moving to the next steps. So to begin in this posture, our foundation is incredibly important. It's the most important thing because that's what we're building, that's our base. That's what we're building the rest of the house on. Okay, so we want to start with kind of the proper dimensions of our base. So if we put our elbows on the floor, we should be able to catch the outsides of our elbows with our hands. That brings our elbows into shoulder width distance. Okay, so from here, once you find this, you can swing your hands forward, but don't move your elbows. And then I want you to interlace your fingers. And interlace your fingers so that your pinkies don't interlace. So I'll come and show you. The pinkies lay over top of each other as opposed to crossing. Making sure you're not sticking the pinkies out. Yeah. So they can lay in front of each other and the rest of the fingers cross. And also make a good connection there. So elbows, shoulder width distance, fingers interlaced except for the pinkies. What we want to do is the whole line from the pinky to the elbow, the side of the hand, we want to ground it into the floor. That might not mean that everything touches the floor. That's totally dependent on your anatomy. But you want to have the intention of grounding into the floor. Yeah. So as you ground into the floor, the first step now is to come into a kind of a shortened downward facing dog. So we'll begin with a strengthening exercise. This is an exercise that everybody can do, whether you have a sensitive neck or not. Okay, so coming into like a short downward dog, just let your head relax. So your head is not touching the floor. Walk your feet in as close as you can while pressing down. So notice how I'm not sinking, I'm really lifting away from the floor. Yeah, not sinking, lifting away from the floor. And hold this posture. I'm going to hold that posture for 10 to 20 breaths. That's a pretty good indicator of whether you're strong enough to go up into the full version of the posture, is to be able to hold that. So if you're building up strength, you can hold it for as long as you can, and then put your knees on the floor, and then come back up again. So slowly building up the amount of time that you can hold the posture. So the next step in the posture is to place the head on the ground. There's generally a general rule is the kind of the highest, just in front of the highest point of your head. So to find that, you can place the butt of your palm into the dip of your nose, and where your longest finger lands, it's usually your middle finger, that's pretty much the point where you balance, where you place your head on the floor. So it's not all the way back here, it's not here, yeah, it's pretty much the highest, the crown of your head, the highest point of your head, which I realize for everybody that's a bit different. Everybody's head is shaped differently. But that usually gives the appropriate spot. So same position with the arms, strong foundation in the floor, and then you're going to place that point on the floor
And tuck the back of your head into your hands. So tucking your head into your hands. Okay. From here, your shoulders need to stay broad. So the shoulder blades go out and forward, yeah, as opposed to collapsing in
And towards your neck. Yes, we want to stay broad in the shoulders. Okay. Moving into a shorter downward dog. From here, pressing your elbows, pressing your lower arms along the line of the pinky into the floor, making sure you're not collapsing into your neck, but lifting away from the floor. Yeah, so as little weight in your head as possible. Yeah, so pushing into the hands, drawing the belly in, the whole line of the hand. So if you push hard enough, yeah, that you can actually lift off the floor. Your head is light on the floor. Okay, so this also, you should be able to hold this posture. The next step is to walk your feet in closer. But notice that when I do that, I'm not collapsing through my back. Yeah? So this is a big no-no. Yeah? We're continuing to move the shoulder blades. We want to move the shoulder blades that way. Yeah? So the shoulder blades wrap around the back and move that way. Even as our feet move closer towards our face. Yeah? So pushing into the arms, pushing into the elbows, pushing into the wrist line, the pinky line, walking your feet closer. And you might actually try to do a couple rocks here. So keeping your upper body stable and still as you rock onto the tips of your toes. Yeah? Okay. That being said, your hamstrings might not be flexible, and that doesn't matter. So when your hamstrings are a little tighter, what's going to happen is that your knees are going to have to bend. So if you try to force yourself to have straight legs and your hamstrings are not flexible, then you'll never get your hips high enough. So there has to be a compromise somewhere. So if your hips or your hamstrings are tighter, then what you'll need to do is as you lift up, your knees will bend. But at the same time, with bent knees, see if you can walk your feet closer to your hands. Again, you're not collapsing back. Your chest is not collapsing backwards. You're pushing into your hands and lifting your upper back to be long, even if the knees bend. Yeah? Pressing down to lift the hips up. Now, so we want to try to get our hips to come up over our head, whether the knees are bent or whether the legs are straight. So being able to hold in a posture like that is really important. So again, work on the phase that's appropriate for you and stay there working on it. So the next step would be to come to the point where you can, without collapsing through your back, without collapsing through your shoulders, and you might be able to lift one foot off the floor and just hold the posture, keeping the hips lifted, right? So as you root down through the hands, you stay lifted, and then you can just try switching your legs and holding. The next phase is to move from not one leg, but two legs. So the easiest way to do this is kind of to make a pulling action, to work on pulling your legs towards your chest. This can be a point when it's helpful to practice with socks on a slippery floor with something under your head, so you can just turn your mat sideways. So I'll use a little towel to demonstrate. So to get this idea of pulling in, if you have something slidey that you can put your feet on, that's great. Again, just set yourself up like normal and lift to where you can. And then I want you to work on sliding your feet across the floor, pulling your knees towards your chest while your upper body doesn't move. Yeah, the upper body stays stable and your knees can go wide. That's perfectly fine. So at one point when you pull in, you can actually try and take your feet off the floor, but everything else stays where it is, right? So when your feet can come off the floor, right, you can try to hold this posture. That pulling action, the stabilization, and the drawing in is what will lift you up into the posture eventually. Okay, so we're in our downward dog kind of position. We're walking our feet as close as we can. We might need to bend our knees, pushing into the hands or the line of the pinky to the elbow. We're going to try to lift our feet off the floor. And if we can lift our feet in, we can actually draw the knees up a little bit towards parallel with the floor. You can point your toes and keep your knees squeezing in. So from this point, right, it's kind of a point of finding your balance. Make sure that you're drawing in through your belly and you're grounded through your hands. So there's still a lot of weight in your hands, right? Literally you could lift yourself off the floor. As much as you ground down, we don't want to drop our weight into our head. We want to continue to lift ourselves up. Okay. Once you can balance with your knees together and your legs up, from there, usually the thing that happens is that we start to collapse through the shoulders. We start to lose the integrity of our arms. They'll start to kind of bow outwards and we'll collapse through the shoulders. That is the part of us that needs to stay stable. Kind of no compromises. That is our base. Our foundation needs to be strong to support us. You're trying to get to this point, squeezing in, lifting the knees up, tucking the ribs in so you're not coming into a back bend, but tucking the ribs back, hugging the ribs back. From here, if you can balance here and stay for a good 10 breaths, then you can start to try and straighten your legs up. So go slow, squeeze. You can start by lifting your knees up towards the ceiling. So the inner legs stay together. Your pubic bone moves forward. So forward is that wall. Pubic bone moves forward. Ribs stay back. Your elbows and your pit wrists stay on the ground. From there, if you can hold this, then you could straighten your legs all of the way up. Yeah, again, rooting into the floor and lifting through the legs. So everything pressing down to lift you up. Exiting, we'll go in the reverse direction is going up. Yeah. So it's really taking phases, moving through phases of the posture. The last phase of the posture is to move up into headstand with straight legs. That does require some hamstring flexibility, but really what it requires is a lift in the lower belly and a grounding through the arms, and then the legs become light. So the more that we can find the earth, the more we can rise up from it. So if we'd like to move with straight legs, we can simply see if we can rock our hips so that we roll over our toes, squeeze our inner legs together, and draw our legs up towards the ceiling. Yeah, there's a counter pressure in the hands. And I should say that if you feel like your weight is dropping this way, right, then a good counterbalance is to press a little bit more into the elbows and lift along the front side of the body. If you feel like you're moving that way,
then you need to push the pinky side of your hand more into the floor. So in that way your arms act kind of like a steering wheel, a rudder for where you need to go. Coming down with pike legs is the same, right? So drawing the belly in, strong foundation, reaching through the legs to place your feet on the floor. And after you've been in the posture, it's a good idea to just have your head down.
So these are all things, these are all steps that you can work on to build up to moving into headstand, right? And work on the stage that is appropriate for you. And then if you feel like one thing is becoming easier, then you can start to move towards the next steps. But really the most important thing is stability in the upper body. There's really stabilization. Once you get that stable base, that's not moving, right? So you're not dropping into the neck, you're not rounding into the spine, you're open through the chest, you're grounded through the arms, so that the rest of the body can move and stack onto the strong foundation that you're building. I hope that helps. Let me know if it does help you or not. Thank you.